8-bit computer fans, and especially Commodore 64 fans. Welcome to this video on my Commodore 64 C64 collection. Now, as you can see, I've got quite a conservative collection of games. Nothing compared to the thousands of games that some collectors have for their Commodore 64. I never want to do that. I never want to just collect for the sake of it. Each of these games that you see here have some nostalgic meaning and purpose for me. A lot of them I had as a young lad, a young man, very young man, 30 odd years ago. Some of them I didn't, so I'm able to get them now. They all have some nostalgic meaning to me, and some of them are actually quite valuable. There's one very special game here. Keep watching, I'm going to show you that in more detail. Some of these have surprising amounts of contents within the boxes. I'm going to show you some of these games in more detail for that purpose. I'm also going to discuss a little bit of the pricing of some of these games as well. So that's enough of the introduction. Let me show you a few of these games in more detail. The first game I want to show you is The Last Ninja 1. Now, obviously they made more than one Last Ninja game for the Commodore 64. They made The Last Ninja 1, Last Ninja 2 and Last Ninja 3, and I think Last Ninja Remix came out on the 64 as well. Last Ninja 2 tends to be the most popular game that people go for, and prices do reflect that. I'll mention the price in a moment. Luckily, if you're after The Last Ninja 1, that always had more nostalgic meaning to me. The prices are actually very decent on this. This was one of the first games I bought for the Commodore 64. A couple of years ago now, since I got my second edition, shall we say, since I started collecting in later life for the Commodore 64. This was one of the first games I went for. It cost me £20. The good thing about this one is that everything's in pretty much perfect condition. The cassettes do work, I've tried it. It's even got a manual included with this version, and often when you buy this, you often find that the manual's not included. So for £20 I got a decent deal. I could have probably got it for a little bit less if I offered, but still it is what it is. I got it for £20. I always buy cassette games for my Commodore 64. I did have a disc drive for the Commodore 64 too, but I find the cassettes more nostalgic for me. It's what the Commodore 64 in fact came with in the UK. Disc games tend to be 3 times the amount you pay for a cassette, so you can imagine this, if it was on disc, to be at least £40 to £60, especially in good condition. I'm going to link you to my original video I did on the Last Ninja series a couple of years ago now. I'll link you to that video. The first game always had more meaning to me because it was a game that I learnt to hone my skills in The Last Ninja. It's a game I learnt to play, The Last Ninja. A notoriously difficult game to play when you first play it. It does take some getting used to. But this is a game I preferred. I also preferred the actual setting of this one too. It's like an oriental setting, old world oriental setting. Fantastic game. Really happy to got it, and I feel I got it at a decent price too. Okay, let's move on to the next games. And here we move on to my Microprose collection. If there's ever an entire collection of games I want to collect for, it's a Microprose collection of games. They basically made simulation software back in the early days of the Commodore 64. They also made great games like Civilization, the original Civilization, and Pirates, made by the same programmer, Sid Meier. I'll come to these in a moment. As you can see, they're all in various different sizes. Here's where the contents of the game boxes really takes on a whole new meaning. You've got this very early game. This is one of the very earliest games that Microprose released, Spitfire Ace. I think it was the other one was Hellcat Ace or something of that sort. This one I got recently because I never had it back in the day, but I really want to go for a whole collection of Microprose games. And it's good to have one of the very earliest games, and it's good that this came with the instructions too. That only cost me $5, so I got quite a good deal with that. Then you come on to Solo Flight. I had the big box version of Solo Flight back in the day, similar to this. It's actually a very similar box to this, but with Solo Flight on it. I wanted to get this one because it's the second edition, but it's the goodies that come with it. Here's where you start to see what content you can get in some of these games. These are the instructions, for example. Let's just try and open this out a little bit more. Look at this. And that's just in that small package here, that small cassette. You get oodles and oodles of fascinating reading and maps and contents. And it doesn't end there. It also comes with a poster as well. Let's just pull this out. Look at that. And then more content. And that's just sort of a standard cassette version. Incredible. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you one of these big box versions in more details, because like I say, there's a surprising amount of content, and you'll start to see why these games are so very special to us. Let's start with the epic Project Stealth Fighter. Very aptly named, because this very much is a project. Arguably one of the very first study type flight simulators you could find on a home computer, certainly for the Commodore 64. This is really arguably where the study sort of flight simulators took off. You've got this massive manual. When I say massive, literally hundreds of pages of fascinating content about the Project Stealth Fighter and other aircraft you'll find in the skies, tutorials and missions on how to set up the aircraft. This keyboard overlay that you would get for the Commodore 64 would have all the different keys for your aircraft, and it's a lot to learn. You can't just expect to jump into this aircraft and start playing it straight away. You really need to learn it. Then you've got things like the technical supplements that comes with it. And by the way, this comes on a double cassette and they're double-sided. On cassette, this could take up to 20 minutes simply to load a game. And then once you finish one mission, another 10 to 20 minutes to load in the next mission. Obviously best played with something like the Ultimate 2 cartridge, so you could play it from disc on a fast load. Only takes a couple of moments to load it that way. You would also get these epic maps. I mean, look at this for content. They don't... Oh, okay, it's going on to the next part of the loading there. You don't get content like this anymore. Games just don't come like this anymore. I'm going to use my favourite simulation at the moment, which is DCS World. Fantastic. You can get PDF files that you can download and view on your phone or tablet while you're playing the game. But you just don't get presentation, physical content like this, even with those games anymore. Absolutely epic. And this just all adds to the atmosphere when you're playing the game. So when you load the game up and start playing it, and you've got all this to go through, and the keyboard overlay especially, it really feels like you are involved in a project, not just a game. Still very playable today. I'm going to spend hours playing this. I'm going to show you another one in a moment, in fact, that I do spend hours on. Actually, let's go to the next one right now. And now we come to the mighty gunship. If there was ever a game to embody the fact that you could spend hundreds of hours and years of gameplay in a game, this is it for me. I played the heck out of this when I was a young lad, or young man. I'm still playing the heck out of it. I put about 3 or 4 hours into this the other night. In fact, I've got a campaign going at the moment. and I'm part way through that. Basically, you can get yourself promoted through the ranks to Colonel, apparently Captain Colonel, that type of thing. Do lots of missions, change your style. It's a chopper game, so it's a gunship helicopter game. But you can get promoted, get medals, and there's literally hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of gameplay here. In fact, years and years if I'm anything to go by with this. It comes with the same sort of typical Microprose manual, about hundreds of pages or so. Fascinating reading. In fact, with these manuals, what I tended to do back in the day was actually take them to bed with me, or after I finished the game, take them downstairs while I'm watching TV and just read through the fascinating content. I still do that after playing these games. I'll read through this fascinating content. Content on things like the different enemies and tanks and planes and choppers you'll face in the game. Contents on specifics on specifications of the gunship itself and its weapons. Fascinating reading, and again it comes with that marvellous C64 keyboard overlay. Microprose weren't the only company to do this, Elite also did this as well, but it just adds so much to the game, so much immersion to the game, it's hard to believe until you actually play it yourself. Still a game that I will play for years to come. I mean, we could just say that I've been playing this game for the past 35 years. Now, how's that for value? Talking of value, Gunship and the previous game I showed you, Project Still Fighter, I got them both for £10 each. This is actually a really good version. The box is in great condition. There's no sort of moulding going on. The manual's in fantastic condition and the keyboard overlay looks new. So for £10 I got a really good deal there. If this comes out on disc, you can expect that to triple or even 4 times the amount. But that's just the way things are. Excellent game, glad I got it again, and I'll be playing this, like I say, for many years to come. Let's show you another. And now we come to Pirates. One of the most sought after Microprose game, probably the most sought after Microprose game on the 64. On eBay, people pay a premium price for this. Before I go into that, and before I go into my actual version, a little tidbit of information for you. Did you know that Pirates was originally released on the Commodore 64? This is the home of Pirates, you could say. It was first released on the Commodore 64, and then ported across to computers like the Apple II, Amstrad, Atari ST, Amiga. Later on there was a remake, Pirates Gold, which came out on PC again, and then things like the Wii, I believe, and Xbox and PSP. But this is the original version. It was created and designed for the Commodore 64. So there you go, a little bit of information for you. Many people say this is the best version, the Commodore 64 version. I completely agree, nothing compares to this. I have played other versions and the remake of this. Doesn't compare with the original. This is absolutely brilliant on the Commodore 64. Okay, so if this comes up on eBay, typically you'll see this going for about at least £80 or €80. I've seen copies where it's missing parts. It's still going for about £20 or £30 with missing bits and pieces. And even beat up copies. Mine's actually quite a good copy indeed. Very decent copy. But beat up copies still go for £20 or £30. I've even seen just the disc sell for about £17. It's incredible. People really want to get hold of this game, and so did I. That's why I bought it. Now, this particular copy, I saw it was selling for £47. There's a couple of caveats and a couple of interesting things with this copy. I asked the seller if she could lower the price to £40, and she did. She lowered it to £39. I really didn't hesitate then. I bought it. A number of people were watching it. I just bought it for £39. Like I say, a couple of caveats. First caveat is that Typically, Microprose boxes will come with this kind of lid and bottom kind box. So you've got the top lid joining onto the bottom of the box. The problem with this, I'm using this as an example, is that you get warping around the edges of the boxes. That's unavoidable. That's going to happen because you're lifting off the top of the box and putting it back on. You're going to get a little bit of warping around the edges. They all pretty much have that. You're talking about games now which are 30 years plus old. You're always going to get that little bit of warpage around the edge there. With this being a slide-on sleeve, you don't get that at all with this box. It keeps that box intact, and this is actually in good condition. It keeps this cover, it's like a cover sort of sleeve thing, that keeps intact as well, so I prefer that. I believe I had originally the big box version, about the same size as that of Pirates. I don't remember seeing this size box of Pirates, so that's actually pretty good to have. Looks like a really early cover as well, a really early box. It's actually got 1986 on the box there, and yet Pirates was released in 1987, probably the end of 1986. Well, there you go, that's a really early version and an unusual one. I don't see these come up often. Another big caveat, and the seller did explain this on the original selling page, is that it doesn't come with the original disc. Now I'm going to show you a picture of the original Pirates disc that the game normally comes with. And as you can see, this has got a different label altogether. Now she did say that it could be a review copy, which is possible, or it could be a pirated copy. Pun intended, I mean pirates, pirated. It could be a pirated copy. It could be either. My inkling originally was thinking it could be a review copy. That address there was the original, the very first. Actually, it's on the back of one of these cards. This card here, which is, I've got 2 registration cards. But that original address there was the original office, UK office of Microprose when they first set up. So that's quite good to have, that card as well. I've got 2 cards from the second address. I think this second address is like the warehouse address where they sent the games out from. But yeah, so it could well be a review or preview copy. Counterfeiters were quite clever back in the day, and they're still quite clever, so it could in fact just be a pirated copy. I'm going to do some research in that. When I find out more, I'll link it in the description below. But yeah, that's obviously a bit of a caveat if it is a pirated disc, but it doesn't bother me too much. Also on the box there, you can see it's got cassette. Well, obviously it's not a cassette. What I can do is actually look on eBay for a cassette, a beat up old sort of copy of Pirates, or just the cassette by itself. They do come up sometimes, and then I can plop it in the box if I want to. The reason I was interested in this is that the rest of it's complete. You've got this map which dates to 1987, so that adds up with the game, the release of the game. In great condition as well. Often you'll find these don't even come with the map. That's where the prices will be about £20 to £30. When it comes with the map, they suddenly shoot up to £80 plus. This one's in great condition, so it's good to have that. It's got the warranty cards like I showed you. It's got a newer catalogue. Often when I buy my Microprose games, so I've got a few of them, as you've seen, they don't come with the catalogue. It's handy to have one, even though it is 1990, so it's obviously a few years later. Still good to have. It's got lots of interesting newer games in there, which it's just interesting to look at and interesting to have. Not too bothered about the catalogue, but it's good to have. The actual manual, the actual manual itself, if we look inside here, this is interesting. It actually states there, first edition. Now I don't know how rare that is to have a first edition manual, but I would say it's pretty good to have. And as you can see, it's full of tidbits and information. Fantastic read, fantastic bedtime reading. That's good to have. So okay, so you're probably thinking, £40 for that? Why? As I've explained, these are highly sought after. If you wanted a copy with the map and manual in good condition and the box in good condition, you're going to be paying about £80. There's no doubt about it. They go for that price. There's one on the moment on eBay. It's a cassette version with the Kicks label. That's on sale for £120. I'm going to keep an eye on it. I don't know if it's because the cassette is rarer to find than the disc. So it's a bit of a reversal in this case. Usually discs are more expensive for the Commodore 64 to buy nowadays. But I've got a feeling the cassette version is rarer to find than the disc version. So that's possibly why they've got it on sale for £120 at the moment. The cassettes I've seen on eBay. It may just be they're trying their luck. Regardless, it always goes for a high price. So to get it for £39 with a good quality map, very good quality first edition manual, and that early box. It's an unusual box as well. I'm happy with it. I play my games, I've got it running at the moment in fact, I play my games using the Ultimate 2 cartridge. So I don't need a disc or cassette, it's just nice to have. It's for my collection, I'm not looking to sell this. This is for me, and it's all these bits that I wanted. So I feel I've got a good deal there. It'll be interesting to know what you think. Please put your thoughts about this item in the description. But I'm quite happy with it. If I can find and seek out a cassette for pirates, they do come up and you can buy them in job lots sometimes. People don't realise what they are, or they're just selling a load of loose cassettes. If I can find one for this, that'll be brilliant. Pop it inside. I'm not in a rush to do it. This is for my collection and I'm happy to have it. Anyway, let's show you more games. And now we come to a couple of old duffers. Literally, I saw these for sale on an eBay page and I just had to have them. The seller did say that they've seen better days, they're a bit torn, a bit beat up, but I love them. This is another Microprose game to add to my collection. I never saw this box back in the day. US Gold, in case you didn't know, were distributors of games, and originally from Microprose, US Gold distributed their games, and then Microprose actually went away from them and started to actually distribute their own games. But originally US Gold did. So this is a really early copy of F-15 Strike Eagle. Box is not fantastic, but that's what I love about these two games. These are coming on to be antique now, Commodore 64 games, and to find them in a not so pristine condition is often a joy to find. It actually tells a story of the game, especially when you got a very early edition of a game like this. It's a very early edition of F-15 Strike Eagle. Wonderful to have. The actual manual in the game itself is very old as well, and very old looking, antique looking. I just love the look and texture of these boxes, even if they're not in the best condition. I actually emailed the seller of these games. There you go, that's F-15 in action there, very early flight simulator game. I emailed the seller of these, said thank you, you made me a very happy chappy. He sold them for $6.99 for both of them, and £3 P&P, so $9.99 altogether. Not a bad price at all. He said he was surprised they didn't go quicker, even if they are a little beat up. They're really collectible, and I completely agree with him. Really happy to have these in my collection. Love the look of them. I love the look of the beaten up condition of them. Both fantastic games, really happy to have them. And just a bit of a tip for you, you don't need to buy the best condition games sometimes. Look for games like this, which are maybe a little beaten up, but they're old sort of first editions of these titles and are just fantastic to have. Anyway, let's show you some more. Here's a few clamshell games I own. Nothing screams more retro sorts of 8-bit games to me than these clamshell games. I mean, look at them, they're beautiful. There's this sort of hard case rather than the sort of clear plastic cases that you would find games in at the time. All these sorts of clamshell games. Let's go through these. This is one of the earliest games. I'll link you to a video when I first got this 64 a few years ago. This is one of the first games I'd loaded on it. I'll link you to that video on the top right. Ghosts and Goblins. I love that clamshell case. One of my favourite arcade games ever, and a fantastic game on a Commodore 64 too. Look at that case though. Absolutely fantastic. I paid just a few pounds for that, literally. So that was a good buy. This one I paid just a couple of pounds of. It's like a compilation of games. Another beautiful clamshell case. You don't find games like this anymore. This went out after the Commodore 64 Spectrum and Amstrad sort of stopped production. Then you wouldn't find these sorts of clamshell cases anymore. And it's a great shame because I love them. Here we got the Rocky Horror Show, a game I didn't have back in the day. I saw this and I thought I'll just go for it because I loved the Rocky Horror Show. The original musical was fantastic. A cult status musical if you haven't seen it yet. Just loved the style of the case. I think I paid about £10 for this, which is a bit overpriced to be fair. One of the first games I bought for this Commodore 64 too back in the day, well back a few years ago in fact. Doesn't come with the instructions, and I think the original came with a poster as well, but still a fascinating game to own, and I just love that box art. This is my favourite of the lot. I got this more recently for something like £6 or so or less. Look at the beautiful shininess of that clamshell games. This does come with instructions, not in the box, on the back of this cover. I'm going to show you this in more detail because this beggars belief. And there you go, I pulled the cover out of the box and look at this. You just don't see this in games anymore. This is why I wanted this. The original eBay page was showing these instructions. I just thought, wow, I just have to have this. You've even got the sort of, it's basically, Southern Belle is like a sort of very early train simulator. Very primitive graphics, but fascinating. I had the sequel, I think it's called The Evening Star, back in the day, but I always wanted this one but couldn't find it, so I found it more recently. Look at the amount of instructions. Like I say, that's just pulled from the front cover, and then you fold it out, and you've got all these wonderful instructions. You don't see this anymore. Also comes with this nice little leaflet, how a steam train locomotive works. Wonderful. What a buy for about £6 or so. What an absolute star buy. Another jewel in my collection. Absolutely love this. And it's just so vintage, really, is the best way to describe it. Look at it. I will spend hours poring over this and playing this game. Absolutely fantastic. So there you go, that's my Commodore 64 game collection so far. As you can see, these are all on cassettes. I just prefer to collect for the data set. It's just more meaningful for me. And I've certainly not finished yet. Like I say, you can expect me to have double this amount in a few more years. There's a lot more games I want yet. But what are your thoughts? Do you collect for a retro gaming system, an older system? What is it? What kind of games do you like to collect? What are your thoughts on my collection? Do let me know. Please give this video a like if you indeed have liked it, and subscribe for more. I'll see you soon.